ladies and gentlemen, you are in the zone. People. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter. We're back. A great guest last week. We had a blast of a show, but we're back today, and we got a lot of ground to cover today, Pete. There's a lot of stuff going on in the basketball world right now. As we've alluded to on this show, it is completely upside down right now. College basketball is being played more in the court than on the court. And I just came up with that one, Pete. I like that. They're in the court more than they're on the court.
It's true.
And it is true. And it's terrible. And it's difficult to see. It's like watching someone that you love repeatedly do things that you know aren't good for them. And you sit by powerless, and there's nothing you can do. They have to find their own course in their own time. But it's like watching somebody that you really care about step down the wrong path every single time. And this lawfare that's going on in this country really, really has become unhealthy and has really, really taken us into a place that's not really good for the players, the game, or anything that resembles that.
It's almost like the definition of insanity. They just keep doing the same dumb things.
Same thing. Yeah. Just repeating the same thing. There's a lot of that going around these days. There's an awful lot of that going around these days. But I wanted to start off the show with our NCAA portal and with a little bit of a portal potty. For some reason, I just want to mention this. They said that the portal would be closed on May 1st, and then we gave you a number, the number of the participants that were in the portal, and now that number is significantly more than the number that we gave you. And so we're not sure how those portal pirates slipped past the deadline, but I'm assuming now that the NCAA putting up a deadline or putting up anything remotely positively popular to that is just out of the way right now.
Right.
The NCAA is sitting on the sidelines with their hands in their pockets, and they're incapable of doing anything right now to anybody. Want to transfer? We have a 1-year sit rule. No, you don't. Want to go from school to school to school to school? Well, you can only have, it's a one-time transfer. No, you don't. The NCAA right now, we've talked about this on the show, they're in a bad spot. They're in a bad spot. And I don't think they brought in the governor to make it any better. I don't think they brought in Mr. Baker to do any better.
He's been incredibly quiet.
It's quiet is one way of describing it, but also motionless. Same way he ran Massachusetts, in my opinion. But let's go right now. They have this thing called the way too early top 25. And I don't think it's ever way too early for a top 25. This is John Fanta. So we're going to footnote, we're going to give a little bibliography here. This is John Fanta's way too early top 25. We right now are in the process of doing our draft preparation. So we're going to rely on Mr. Fanta here, and we'll go through and we'll kind of pick and choose what we see here, and kind of what this has created, though, is it's very, very difficult, as we said, to get a look at it, but also very, very difficult to get a clear look at it. And right now, this way too early top 25 will be different tomorrow, most likely, when some of these NIL arrangements come to bear, when some of these contracts are met and some of these players are moving and finally settle. All right, so he has Kansas at number 1. They have Hunter Dickinson returning. I think that's exciting for them. I thought he had a terrible year this year personally, not met with, because now we have a number, right? There's millions of dollars being spent. I don't know the exact number that they have on this gentleman, and I think it's probably fluid. It can change. You can add more in there as you go, pick up new deals, as like with Caitlin Clark did. No issue there. But I thought his performance, if you're going to be $1 million guy, well, like in the NBA, you got to perform at that level. And I don't think that he performed at that level, nor do I think that their team met that level as far as their payroll. Okay, so now you have an aggregated payroll as to what each team spent. And I can tell you Kansas is probably way, way, way up there in terms of their budget.
Do you know how crazy just that sentence sounds?
To the average person, it probably sounds
the Kansas City
crazy.
University of Kansas payroll. They're college students.
Do they go back now and erase all of the violations that were committed all of those years? Because now they're condoning it. What they once said was illegal, now they say is perfectly legal. Will they go back and expunge all of the records of the people who got caught on the other side of that line? I doubt it. UConn, number 2. Fanta, he's a fan. He likes UConn. We all like UConn up here. We love what Danny Hurley's done with the program. Right now, if you bet against them, I would. If I had to put right now my way too early top 25, I'd have UConn as the number 1. Right now, nobody has shown any ability to come next to them, discerning of the personnel. They've had different personnel, and they've gone through this thing, and boom, boom, they've made 2 tournaments look really, really easy. So I don't know why you would bet against them at this point, but personally, to see them in the 2 spot, I personally would have them in number 1, but that's just a credit to their program, a credit to UConn's basketball. What a great, great time they're in right now. Houston, they don't have any problem. They have Kelvin Sampson, one of the better coaches in the game today and the absolute best defensive coach in the game. I love Houston's approach. I like the way they approach things. And I think that as they go on, their program is going to be able to sustain better than other programs because they have something that they live and die on, and that's defense. And everybody else in the country is living and dying on personnel right now. And they're standing on something that's a core fundamental of basketball. I applaud Coach Sampson for that. And I think it's going to pay huge, huge dividends, possibly even a national championship in the next 5 years. Because all of this attrition, all of this moving around forces you to change your view as a coach as well. It's forcing you to step off of tried and true things that you used to do because they don't work no more. And so now you have to go into a different mode, and Kelvin Sampson seems to be staying in his same mode. Bobby Hurley staying in that same mode, and I think they're being successful as a result of it. Number 2, North Carolina, the return of their guard, their superstar guard, R.J. Davis. Fabulous, fabulous news for them. They got a little work to do up front if they lose Baycoat and lose Ingram, which it looks like they will. But they're picked high here. I think 4 is way, way too high for them. I think looking at Duke's roster, looking at Carolina's roster, and going into the season, I think I'd much rather coach Duke's team than I would North Carolina's. Iowa State, this team has been the surprise of the NCAA in the last 2 years. TJ Otzenberger has done an absolutely fabulous job with this team. Really, really getting Iowa State into the top 5, being in top 10 territory for this team is just a testament to the coach. That's how you know who the good coaches are. Because like Pete Carrill never had a bye game. Pete Carrill took Princeton to the dance, and they gave Georgetown and other big, big power teams everything they could handle. That's how you know you have a great coach. All right, so you got Iowa State in there. Alabama, number 6. Again, a little bit like Kelvin Sampson, where Nate Oates has kind of made his program into the 3-ball nation. They're going to shoot the most threes in the country, and that's kind of their moniker. I like defense better than I like that, but they were truly successful this year, and at least they have something that they're standing on. Right now, in all of this movement, I think Oates is going to be okay, no matter what they get. Baylor, number 7, I think that this could be a little bit low. I think this team's better than that. And I think they're going to be one of the top 2-3 teams in the country next year. I really, really like their approach with recruiting. They've done a great job in the portal. The NIL, as much as I don't like it, I can still sit back and evaluate it and say that Baylor, I think, has done an unbelievable job. Everybody has St. John's rated as a number 1 portal team. I just don't get it right now, but I think they're trying to add some excitement into that St. John's program. That's what some of this social media stuff does also. It allows for creation of things that really aren't there.
It puts a skew into it.
No doubt. No doubt.
You're pushing a narrative on social media, and it ends up getting picked up as news.
Now. Watch the NBA. It's all narrative now. Yeah. You watch. I'll give you when we go into it. I'm going to give you a stat in the Celtic game, and tell me that it's not narrative when you hear that stat. Gonzaga, number 8. Mark Few, one of the top 5 coaches in the country in the last 10 years, absolutely taken that program to new heights, and it's only because of Mark Few. The day that Mark Few leaves there, Gonzaga will not be Gonzaga. Okay, that's because Mark Few is Mark Few and done an unbelievable job there that few others could have done. 9, the Dukies, I think that's a little low. They got great talent coming in, Cooper, Flagg, and some of the great talent they have coming in. It'll be interesting to see because with them right now, they're like Kentucky. as was a bunch of years ago, where you would get great players, but then they're gone in a year. And so it's very, very difficult to adhere to program integrity when the revolving door is in front of your program. And when I saw the revolving door spinning like it was the day before Christmas at Macy's on the Duke program, I knew that we had reached a level that we had not seen in a very, very long time. When you see ACC players on one team suiting up against their old team the very next year, you know you're in a place that you've never been before. Purdue, number 10, I think this is way too high. I think they lose Zach Edey. I think they lose some other component pieces there. Great job by Coach Painter, but I don't see them being able to retain all of this without the big fella. And we're going to talk about the big Z in a few minutes as well, because we're going to, as we go through the draft, we're going to unveil our picks to you a little bit. So we have our number 1 and we have our number 2 of our NBA talented players that played in the NCAA. I haven't had a full opportunity to go into all the international players that are out there, and there's several of them that are listed at least in the top 5. We'll have to go through that, and we'll have to be diligent. But right now, I can only go by what I've seen, and I'm going to give you our top 30 players next week and give you the first round of our NCAA players. And then as time goes before the 25th, we'll add in the international players, and then we'll have our absolute draft right as we go up to it. We did the same thing last year. So we're going to follow with it. I like to give our American players a really good lift and a really good notice, and so that's how we're going to handle this first. And again, full disclosure, I don't know as much about the European players as I do about the American players. So I want to create and go from my talent base and my knowledge base as much as I can. All right, so they have Purdue at 10. I don't see them being higher than Arizona, who's 11. I think Arizona should go up a little bit. Number 12, Auburn. Number 13, Marquette. Good. That's just a great job by the coach, Shaka Smart down there. Done a really good job. But they're losing Tyler Kolek. They're also losing Ozo Ighodaro, and they're losing another really good wing player. I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain it. I'll see what happens in the NIL deal. It's not really about sustaining anymore. It's about reloading, and we'll see how well they reload. 14 is Florida. I like this team. I like the coach. I like everything they're doing down there. I think they're playing basketball in a good fashion. I like the way they move the ball. I like the way they play spirited basketball. But I also like the fact that they really, really move the ball on the perimeter and shoot well. I think that part of shooting well is moving that ball and being unselfish on the perimeter. And when you give it to somebody a little bit too late, that impacts how they shoot. So I think that Florida team is really bought into that ball sharing concept, and that's always going to be well for you. It's always going to do well. Indiana, they have them way too low, Pete. 15, this is way, way too low. Indiana had a very tough year last year. There was talk about the coach being fired, all this different stuff, but right now they have reloaded, and they reloaded in big, big fashion. Plus, they're able to sustain and retain and cut down on their attrition by keeping some of the players that they have. Mackenzie Mbako is going to stay. They got some other players that are going to stay. And so I think Indiana in the 15 spot's a little bit too low. 16, Texas. 17, UCLA. 18, Creighton. I don't know how Creighton would do it either. They're gonna have to stay in there, and really work it, because they're losing Trey Alexander, they're losing Kalkbrenner, they're losing a lot off of that team, and they're losing Shearman too. So that's their 1, 2, 3. And Baylor Shearman, I think, is going to be a pretty good pro. I saw him in the combine. I like him. St. John's at 19. I'm going to say this is a little bit high, and this is why I think that some of this hysteria goes on. St. John's had absolutely nothing happening in the NIL action. They hadn't signed anybody through the portal. Then they were able to get 2 players out of the portal that are good players, no question about it. But Kadari Richmond, if Kadari Richmond was as good as everybody says he is right now, Seton Hall would have had a much better year. They wouldn't have been the NIT. And I think he's a great player. I think he does have an NBA future. But I think to say that Kadari Richmond's going to turn St. John's around is a bit lofty, to be honest with you. And I don't see them getting the recruits that St. John's used to get. Rick Pitino right now, and this is the ever-changing landscape, but in the high school area right now, St. John's is getting absolutely swallowed up. Nobody that's really, really good is going to St. John's anymore. You have 2 of the top 5 players in the country going across the river to Rutgers. Okay, I know they're in the Big Ten now, but to Rutgers. Compare Rutgers' history in basketball to St. John's history, and they're not even comparable. But right now, St. John's is struggling. I think they thought that some of that would get alleviated with Pitino coming in. It hasn't. They're struggling. Maryland in the 20 spot. I like Maryland higher. They've got a great freshman coming in, and they got some really good players returning. I think it's going to be one of those situations where everybody's looking, going, what's going on at Maryland? What's going on at Maryland? And then you see them break out and be a top 10 team. I think there's a lot going on down there. Coach Willard's got them on the right path. Ohio State, they panicked and brought in this Coach Diebler, who they had let be the interim coach. Again, we go back to what we said a long time ago. Not a good idea to fire your basketball coach in the middle of the season. Because what happened there was they took an interim coach who did a really good job, a great job. But he was part of why they were losing in the first place. And now they went and signed him to become a coach when there were 250 resumes in the country that were far superior to his. And I say far superior. I don't say that lightly. Good luck. I hope it works. But you're gonna run into some coaches out there that absolutely know what they're doing. And everybody looks at this thing. They don't pay them $9 million for nothing, folks. This isn't just tiddlywinks, all right? There's a lot to this. Okay, Texas A&M, a buzzsaw, 22. Watch him. He's going to have a talented team. They're always going to be tough to play. And although you have them in the 22 spot, I think you could see them go a little bit higher. Xavier in the 23 spot, I don't get this pick at all. I really don't. I think they were just desperate to include some Big East teams here. When the Big East right now is one of the teams that's having the biggest trouble in this transition, having the biggest trouble in this movement towards football. All of the football schools are now benefiting, and they're taking it out on the non-football schools. And if you didn't have football, you didn't build up football like the Big East did not for years, and were able to go in the NCAA tournament and draw that big market share by going to the Final Four every year, now they're going to shut that down. They're going to make that really difficult. And you're going to see the Big East really struggle. You're seeing it in the ACC as well. They have Rutgers 24. If those two freshmen get off and are really good like they can be, Dylan Harper, Asarius Bailey, they have some other really good pieces there, and they're picking up pieces as they move through in the NIL, and I think Pikel's going about this the right way. He knows he has two very good young freshmen. You don't get the number 2 and the number 3 freshmen in the country and not have a lot of influence and emphasis on those two players. But they do have some other good pieces, and I think what Pikel's doing is trying to piece it together, trying to make a mosaic out of this where you get some shooters around those guys. You got to get some big men. And I think, they're in a really good spot in the Big Ten because I see the Big Ten being down this year. I see the Big Ten being down there too. And another genuflection to the Big East is Princeton 25. They lose Devin Carter. They lose a lot of good pieces here, and when I go through this, if I say anything to Mr. Fanta, I would say include some other conferences. Because as it broke out during the season, these are all the Power 25, and this is boring. We got to get a little deeper than that because you didn't find, Utah State this year. Nobody saw Grand Canyon. Nobody saw those other people because all you do is see this and get stuck up on this. And if you say St. John's to me is going to be better than some of the other teams that I've seen and you put them in the top 25 that aren't in there in the Mountain West and some of those other places, New Mexico next year, they'll beat St. John's by 15 points in my opinion. If you had Patino on Patino, I'd say the Sun would win by 15 points this year. You don't even see his team in here. Okay, let's move and groove. There's a lot to do today. We got all NBA teams for everybody. So we could do that right now, but we could also possibly go into this thing. We did the piece last week where we had the highest paid NBA guys. We did the piece last week where we had a dozen or so guys that we have. But the first team in the NBA was interesting this year, I thought. I'm looking through my papers here, and I seem to have gone and missed the first team here. All right, but I can come back with it later. But I'll give you what I got here. All right, on the first team, all NBA first team, LeBron James is number 1 with having the most first team accolades. He's 13 out of 21 years he's been on the first team. Kevin Durant comes in number 2 at 6 out of 16 first teams. James Harden, 6 out of 15. Surprising. Giannis Antetokounmpo is 6 out of 11, and this one's going to shock some people. But Luka, very short time in the league, is 5 out of 6. 5 times he's been on the first team. All right, I'm going to go through the second team, and I'm going to go through the third team, and then hopefully I'm going to come back to the first team. Because I think for some moment here, I don't know why, but I lost my first team. Okay, so second team. Oh, no, I got it now. Hold on, Pete.
Hold the phone.
Hold the phone. We're reconstructing. All right. First team, all NBA. This is the all NBA first, second, and third team. And this is really, really tight. Really, really good.
So I got a question. With all the talent in the NBA, how is LeBron still on a first team?
Well, he's not.
Okay.
He was 13 out of 21. So I'm surprised that he was that low as far as making it that many times. But this year, he's not. And so first team is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and we're going to go through some of the salaries in a minute, but they're talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is up, be able to renegotiate his contract, and looking at maybe the NBA's first $80 million man,
Lord.
Year.
Seriously?
Number 2, Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is number 2, and Luka is number 3, Giannis number 4, and Jason Tatum was number 5. That's the first team, folks. No LeBron. Okay.
Yeah, but I can see that first team, though.
That's first team. And I was a little surprised at Jason Tatum. And what you're not going to see here is Jaylen Brown. I was a little surprised by that. Second team, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and Anthony Davis. That's unbelievable. That's a really, really good group. Jalen Brunson, fabulous year. Anthony Edwards is in the playoffs right now. They lost last night, but, man, he's doing great stuff. One of the great young stars in the NBA right now. Kevin Durant, old man time, doing great stuff and still putting it on. Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis. Kawhi Leonard had a very quiet, efficient year over there in Clipperland, and Anthony Davis stayed healthy all year, so he's deserving of second team as well. Third team, Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron James, and Domantas Sabonis. So LeBron draws third team, All-NBA. Honestly, I thought he had a better year than Anthony Davis at the Lakers. I thought he probably could have been second team. I don't know if I would have put him on the first team, but that's the All-NBA. That's what it is. Okay, who's the highest paid people currently? They're talking about SGA drawing somewhere in the $80 million contract right now. LeBron James is the third highest payer in highest paid player in the NBA.
Easy for you to say.
Okay. The pickled Pied Piper is coming to mind right now.
Sure.
Okay. So the number one player, most dollars spent on this player, and I think this is going to be interesting because you're going to see why some programs now are not moving forward and why they were once great and they're not anymore because they got an awful lot of dollars tied up in some old people tied up on the back nine. Steph Curry, $51.9 million. Okay? Unbelievable. I don't think this includes Jaylen Brown's numbers for some reason. Kevin Durant, $47.6 million. LeBron James, $47.6. Nikola Jokic gets $47.6. Joel Embiid, $46.9 million to play basketball. Bradley Beal, $46.7. I have no idea how many games he even played this year for $46 million. Giannis Antetokounmpo, $45. At least Giannis shows up and gives you a hard day's work. He shows up in 81, 82 games most of the year, unless he's hurt. And this year he had a little bit of injury with him, but he's usually a pretty productive player. He gives you your money's worth, if that's possible. Damian Lillard, there you go, right there. It is $90 million tied up in those two gentlemen right now. $91 million tied up in those two players on the Bucks, and they got bounced out in the first round. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, another group that accumulate $91.2 million. The two of them. First round exit, to the Dallas Mavericks. See you later. $90 million. Thank you, Pete. Down the drain. Jimmy Butler, $45.1 million. Klay Thompson, here's where you really get into it. Klay Thompson, $43.2 million. He's not worth $10 million the way he's playing right now, and you've got him up at $40 million. Between him and Steph Curry, you're in the $95 million range. $95 million range, and you have two guards there. Two guards.
I mean, amongst all the sports, I think the NBA players are the most overpaid.
This is ridiculous. I'll say it. Klay Thompson, $43.2 million. Ridiculous. Rudy Gobert, $41.0 million. Fred VanVleet. Who's Fred VanVleet? Nobody even knows who this guy is. $40.8 million. Anthony Davis, $40 million. Here's some guys that are about to get paid that aren't on this list. Luka and Kyrie, neither one of them on this list. SGA, he's about to get paid. Anthony Edwards, not on this list. He's going to get paid. Brunson, going to get paid. Zion, going to get paid. Jamal Murray, Donovan Mitchell, open up the bank because they're coming. Okay, we gave you our Diesel dozen. The Ringer came out with the top 25, under 25. We're going to run them down for you quickly. Number 1, Victor Wembanyama. Number 2, Anthony Edwards. Number 3, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 4, Luka Doncic. Number 5, Tyrese Halliburton. We gave you Halliburton in the beginning of the year, but his rise has been unbelievable. Even I couldn't have predicted that. I liked him, but oh my God, I liked him as a draft pick. I liked him as a pro, but the rise in his stock and the way he has shown in NBA level, it's one of the reasons that as I go into the draft, you really favor size in the NBA. You know, he's a 6'7", 6'8" guard. Tyrese Maxey at number 6, Chet Holmgren number 7, Jalen Williams number 8. That's a surprise, a little bit high there, but he's having really, really good numbers and doing some good stuff. Paolo Banchero and Zion Williamson number 10. Okay, I'm going to put the Ringer through the ringer here just a little bit on the first 10. Okay, Zion Williamson has to be in the top 3 here. Zion Williamson has to be in the top 5 here. Okay, without question. All right, Tyrese Halliburton, I love him. You've heard me on this show.
Yep.
Love him. But if I'm in the schoolyard and I'm picking 2 guys, I'm taking Zion Williamson every day, twice on Sunday. Ja Morant, out this year. I wonder if he's stewing or is there going to be more trouble? We don't know. I hope he comes back and has an unbelievable year. He's only 24 years old. Turn it around. Let's get back to being one of the great players in the NBA. He's listed at number 11. Alperen Sengun from the Rockets. Boy, did he have a tremendous year. And Ime Udoka. I had Joe Mazzulla as the coach of the year, but I really, really chewed on that a little bit because I loved Ime Udoka and the job that he did with the Rockets. He got another shot after getting bounced out with the Celtics. That Rockets team, I had penciled in for like 4 wins all year, honestly. With the amount of talent that they had, I had the Rockets penciled in for like 6 wins. And now they almost made the playoffs. They chased the Golden State Warriors right up till the end. And a little bit of stuff going on there at the end. I think that bounced them out. Scotty Barnes, we've talked about him on the show. Love him. Toronto Raptors, move him up. Move him up. He doesn't belong in the 13th spot. He's 22. He's putting up great numbers out there, and he shows up in a lot of categories. Cade Cunningham from the Pistons, stuck. Absolutely stuck in Detroit. He's in the motor town, and he is absolutely out of gasoline down there. If he's going to be a good player in the NBA, request a trade immediately because that franchise is going absolutely no place with the leadership that they have and the group that they got running this thing and the way that program has gone little by little by little into the depths that it did, setting a record this year for most consecutive losses. Get out of there, CC Rider. That's what I would call him. I'd be on a motorcycle out of there as fast as I could. Trae Young, 25, the Hawks. They're talking about trading him a little bit right now because they have the number 1 pick. The Hawks have gotten in the NBA lottery. I don't know. Trae Young, they're talking about him actually going to the Lakers to be out there with LeBron because they do need a lead guard. I'm just not sure Trae Young would be the guy that I would go after. Evan Mobley, 22 with the Cavaliers. Brandon Miller, I really like Brandon Miller a lot with the Hornets. Going to have to get him out of Charlotte if he's going to be a star, though. Franz Wagner, 22. I was shocked when I heard that, Magic. He looks like he'd been around a long time. You know, he's at Michigan, been around, but nope, 22 years old. Jaren Jackson, the Grizzlies, going to be a good player in the NBA, 24 years old, has a very, very bright future. LaMelo Ball, not bad, 22 years old, Charlotte, and Jalen Johnson closes out at 21. Jalen Green from the Rockets. The Rockets got a couple of really good players, a couple of really good young players. 22 years old for Jalen Green. Desmond Bane, Darius Garland, and Jabari Smith close out. Darius Garland had a fabulous playoff series for the Cavaliers and doing great stuff for the Cavaliers. I will tell you right now that the Cavaliers have gone ahead and fired their coach, J.B. Bickerstaff, and we'll get into a little bit more of that in depth, but this is another head shaker. It's another head scratcher. What would the NBA be doing if they weren't firing a coach with an NBA-proven record and a winning record? Took the Cavaliers into their best finish in the Eastern Conference semifinals this year. I just don't get it. They'll replace him with some other guy that's been fired more times in a Revolutionary War canon, and then they'll think they're getting better. I don't get it. I really, really don't. Let's jump into the current playoff picture, Pete. We got a good one. Got stuff going on here. I want to report to our Boston Celtics fans, if you were reticent about the $50 million payment to Jaylen Brown, you might have got paid the other night when he hit that big three that forced overtime.
Yes.
Celtics down by 3, all the way down to the end. They fight, and really Indiana, wow, after going through a grueling series with the Knicks and then showing up in Boston Garden with that type of effort, I think the Celtics got to worry about this a little bit. It's kind of like watching Rocky hit the beef in the freezer, you know, and Apollo Creed's managers yelling, hey, you better come in here and watch this guy. I think you better watch those Pacers, man. They're tough. They junkyard dog. And Rick Carlisle, you know, been around the NBA a million times, so you got a huge coaching disadvantage there for the Celtics. But they're up 1-0.
I hear some grumbling though from Coach Seklecki in the other room today. He says, I had that turned that game off, and I never saw the final 3 to put it in overtime. But he goes, the same guy that shot the 3 to put him into overtime was taking shots he had no business taking with the Celtics up by 12.
They got lucky. They really got lucky because the whole end of that game was handled beautifully by the Pacers. And the Celtics, that bomb that went in there at the end, it just, you know, banked in. It wasn't, you know, it was just a shot that you don't expect to go in, basically.
Right.
They're up 1-0. It was 133-128 in overtime. Jaylen Brown hit the bomb 3. He had 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. Very solid first game. And if he doesn't hit that shot, they're down 0-1, and they've gotten broken on their home court. They give up their HCA, which is your home court advantage. Right now they're up 1-0, and I think they're on tonight too. So that'll be interesting. Halliburton, this is not Dick Cheney's Halliburton, folks. This guy's dropping bombs of a different kind, and it's 25 points, 10 assists in a playoff game last night. He hit 14. He took 14 out of the 35 threes that the total team took. So they're really relying on him and his outside shooting right now. The spark plug for the Pacers in the last series with the Knicks, this guy absolutely killed the Knicks, and he's absolutely doing it again, is T.J. McConnell. The little guard that's out of Indiana, played at Arizona, fabulous. He's a spark plug. He had 13 points in very, very short minutes the other night. He also had 4 assists. He did not make a bad play that I saw while they came off the bench and came into that game. They were lucky to escape. Jason Tatum, got to do a little better, especially late in the game. 12 of 26. 2 for 8 from three-point range. He did have 36 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists, but it was 12 of 26 shooting and 2 of 8 from three-point range. A lot of that was on the free throw line. And here's the stat that I want to give everybody, and most Celtics fans won't be too upset by this, but if you hear this, it's going to be a little bit perturbing. The free throw spread, Indiana, 9 out of 10 on their free throws, and the Boston Celtics are 24 out of 30. Okay, there was a differential of 20 free throws in that game. And if you look at some of the calls that were made, you are going to shake your head. You're absolutely going to shake your head. The finger as they used to say in the Walter Matthau movies, the finger. He's got the finger. Well, they might have their finger on the scales in this one. I don't know. I'm just looking at that thing, and that's making my head scratch. I don't know.
Does Indiana actually play defense though? You said they're a scrappy team, so could that be the reason?
They would. Some of those fouls, I just couldn't get my head around some of them.
All right.
I really couldn't.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, the number in the other game, in the Wolves Mavs game, was 18-19, something like that. It was 18-19. And the funny thing is if you go on ESPN and you go to the scores and you hit box score, you go through and you see all of the box score stuff that's in there, you have to hit an extra button to get the free throws now. I don't know why they got that hidden, but you got to hit an extra button to get the free throw thing to come down now. So I was interested to see what it was, and it wasn't on there. I'm looking. I go, oh, I'm looking at a regular box score that I've read my entire life. I'm looking for the free throws to see if there was disparity, and it's not there. And I look up on the corner and it says all stats. And then you punch up all stats, and the only stat that they add in there is the free throws. I thought it was a little bit, things that make you go home. Things that make you go home. All right. So in the other game, you had the Mavs, really, really tough it out with the Wolves. They broke their home court advantage. They broke on my home court advantage, and that was a really, really exciting game. I mean, I watched that game from start to finish, and there wasn't a whole lot of differential in that game in the second half that probably was outside of 4 to 6 points. It was closely contested. Edwards made some bomb shots, some really, really tough bomb shots from outside. But the difference in this game, and Pete and I have talked about him critically at a couple of different times, but he was absolutely fabulous last night, was Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving hit big shots. He had a number of points. Him and Luka combined for 63 points.
Wow.
Last night. And it was just 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, where Kyrie was dominant. You could see it from the first possession of the game. He came to play because the first possession of the game, he took the ball, drove it right down the paint, all the way in for a strong layup, and finished with a really good layup. And he had a really, really good beginning of the game. And then Luka late was terrific. Luka threw some really, really good passes at the end of that game, had high assist numbers. He had 8 assists in that game. But also, as much as I talked about T.J. McConnell being the spark plug for the other team, the Pacers, I see this spark plug being a little bit of a rookie that's had a pretty good rookie year, and we were very high on him in our draft last year, is Derek Lively. Derek Lively had a very, very good game the other night. His efficiency numbers were fabulous. He was only 4 of 4, didn't miss too many shots, but he changed a lot of shots, and he really, really gave them a chance, down in that game when he was running the floor and doing some really, really good stuff. So I was very, very impressed with him. I still am impressed with him because he gives you that really, really good look inside with a guy who doesn't require a lot of shots. Your shots are going up with that two-headed tandem. You're going up with Kyrie and you're going up with Luka, and he just needs to be out there every once in a while to break your heart. When you think you've stopped Kyrie and you think you've stopped Luka, then they throw it up to him, and all of a sudden you've got a lob at the basket. All right, we want to shift gears here just a tiny little bit and go in and talk a little bit about the draft. I wanted to talk about the draft combine, because there's a lot of good things that come out of the combine, in addition to watching the young men play against each other, compete against each other, and really establish themselves in a group of players where they haven't played with ever before in their lives. That's where you can really, really see great players rise. Talk about Scottie Pippen going to the combine, and nobody knew who his name was when he went to the combine. All of a sudden, they're coming out of the combine going, this guy's going to be the next best thing. And his draft stock went from almost negligible to almost being meteor. Probably not a rise like that's ever come out of the combine like it was with Scottie Pippen. But there have been some really, really good combine stories that have come out. And I think this year I'm really kind of leaning, as I started to go through it, I was a little bit reticent to say that this is a bad draft. And I don't want to say that it's a bad draft until I look at all the European players and put everything together. But right now, I'm saying it's not a great one. I'm willing to say that right now that it's not a great draft. And the reasons for that are there's no Victor Wembanyama. There's no generational talent in there that I see, although I'm going to give you our number 1 and 2 a little bit later. But I don't see that in here. There could be a little bit more depth in this draft, but it depends. But the bottom line is this: for all of the NBA general managers and executives out there that are sweating right now, their palms are sweaty, and they're trying to drop some great stuff, so they look good, they get the media exposure, and then they get to move up or keep their job. And so it's a pressure time for the general managers, assistant general managers. And what I say to them is, you only need one good player out of the draft. You only need 2 good players out of the draft. And if you tell me there's not 2 good NBA players in this draft, you have not done your homework. You have not done your homework. Now, are they going to be those sensational, really, really knock your hat off draft picks? Like last year, the top 5, where they hyped them up pretty good. Victor, and his hype was legit. Then they went to Scoot Henderson, and there's a little bit of a mixed bag on that. Brandon Miller was very, very good his rookie year. So there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Amen. And Orsar Thompson went 4 and 5. I don't know that you're going to get back to that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this draft. Now, when you go into last year's draft, I also alluded to the fact that I thought 13, to 20 in that draft, 13 to 22, 23 was awful last year in that draft, and we can go back and do some research on that. But, you're talking about Grady Dick and some of the other players that were drafted after that and not really ever materialized as good players. So I think that you might find a little bit more of that in this draft. But from the combine, standing reach, I wanted to share this with people. That means you're standing flat-footed in the combine also, and this is what I like about them. There's no nonsense here with the measurements. You're getting ready to pay some guy. So when you go to college from high school, you grow 2 inches. You grow 3 inches. Just even if you didn't grow 3 inches. We saw that last year with Drew Tim, where he was listed in the Gonzaga brochures as 6'10", 6'11". When they measured him in the combine, he came out under 6'8". So these are socks only. No sneakers, true measurement. And this one is a standing reach one, which shows a lot of ability to change shots. Okay? Obviously, number 1 was Zach Edey. And the funny thing about that is, we're going to talk this over. This young man is one of the few people that grew when they actually measured him the right way. He actually got taller. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So you have him at 9'7" on his standing reach. But here's something, and this is something that I'm sure NBA execs and general managers are all looking at themselves. Donovan Clingan has the same reach.
Look out.
Donovan Clingan is listed at 7 foot, 7'1", 7'2", but he has the same standing reach as Zach Edey. That's why he's as great shot blocker as he is. He's got some unbelievable wingspan on that young man.
Yeah.
And he's a great, great young man, too. A great story. So I'm really excited to see that, that in this draft, he was a guy that really, really did it the tried and true way, and I'm kind of proud of his efforts. I mean, who else has 2 NCAA title rings, back to back in his first 2 years? Unbelievable.
Sure, yeah.
So the height with no shoes is what I wanted to share with everybody next. Is Edey went from 7'3" to 7'3.75". He's almost 7'4". He's almost in. They asked him to lose weight, which I thought maybe they would ask him to apportion it a little bit more. He was a little bit over 300. Now he's a little bit under 300. But I would say let's keep him at 300 at 7'4" and just make him strong as we can. Let's
Right.
just build that upper body.
Build him up, sure.
And build that leg strength up so that he's got that great base to work from and he doesn't get knocked around. But I was shocked when I saw 7'3.75". These are true measurements. Clingan came out 7'1", 7'5", almost legit 7'2", with a reach, standing reach of 9'7". Now you know why he blocked all those shots, folks. Now you know why he changed all those shots. And sometimes a changed shot is just as good as a block shot, or even better. They have this young man, Quentin Post, coming in the draft, 7 foot, measured 7 foot. Okay, here's a good one. I know the players that are currently playing will love this because everybody's always interested in who's got vertical leap, who's got vertical hops. And I think you're going to be surprised at this name. Reed Shepard came out with a 42-inch vertical, highest in the combine. The second one was Devin Carter from Providence, which I was surprised at. I had not seen that from Devin Carter. I had seen Reed Shepard get off the floor a few times and was surprised by his athleticism, his speed, all that good stuff. But I think, I was a little surprised with Devin Carter because he's an elite shooter. Devin Carter is going to raise his stock. He's going to be a first-round pick somewhere, I think, in the 15 to 20 range maybe. And this is going to help his stock because the rap on him was that maybe he's not a good enough athlete, not big enough, not a good enough athlete. And this is going to dispel some of that. Okay. Let's go back to the NBA firing J.B. Bickerstaff. It would not be the NBA offseason if they didn't fire a coach with a winning record. He was 170 and 159 in 5 years, total 5 years. This year they were in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Unbelievable.
How do you get rid of a coach like that?
99 wins in 2 years. This year they were 48 and 34 and took the 4th seed. And if you dial back to all the shows that we did when we were talking at the beginning of the year, I nowhere near had the Cavaliers in a 4th seed, nor did any other pundit that was out there say the Cavaliers are going to be the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't think most people had them making the playoffs. So again, scratch your head if you want. Okay, so with the NBA players that we've talked about, okay, we're going to give you our number 1 and 2 pick right now. And this is only NCAA, NBA draft eligible players. Obviously, as time goes on, and we're going to talk about maybe the top 5 international players as well that people are speaking about. And to say that the influence of European players in the NBA is not profound and distinct right now, you would be missing the ball. So there's certainly a need for us to evaluate and put them in as best we can and to look at their different stats and their different profiles and do our measurements and do our stuff and see where it goes. But right now, In the Zone is ready to declare that the best number 1 pick out there of all the college players that are currently out there, none other than the Big Z, Zach Edey from Purdue. 7'3", 0.75, 300 pounds, reminds me of Yao Ming. His shooting is better than I thought when I saw him at the Combine. His outside shooting, better than I thought. So if you think he's only going to be a low post guy that can turn around and dunk on people, I think you're going to be mistaken because he shoots the ball pretty well facing up. He's got abilities to block shots. He's got abilities to do some things. He's obviously got to get stronger, going to have to adjust to the NBA speed. But we're going out right now with the Big Z saying he'll be our number 1. Now, I don't know that that's been a big secret. We've been talking about Zach Edey a lot. We think he might be one of the most underrated players of all time. But if you know, last year we gave you Trace Jackson Davis. He wound up being drafted in the 2nd round, almost the last pick taken. And of all that value, if you say of all the people in the draft, Trace Jackson Davis has the highest value because of where they got him. They got him in the late 2nd round, and he turned out and had an unbelievable year. Sure. And all things point to him having an unbelievable NBA career. I don't know why people missed it, and I don't know why that people consistently turn away from our NBA people that are looking at the draft that are our NCAA producers. You know, people that go through the NCAA 4 years, go to the Big Ten, go to the ACC, go to the Big 12, and produce and do great things. I think that that's kind of missing right now, and there's this thing of almost like the Hotel California album, like the Eagles, where the new kid in town, and the European right now is the new kid in town, no question. All right, so our number 2 pick, though, we're ready to give that out. We've got Zach Edey going number 1. Number 2, and this is going to make the Huskies down in Stores howl. They are going to be howling down there. They're going to love the fact that In the Zone right now is going to give their guy the number 2 pick. But it is not, as all prognosticators have tried to intimate, it is not Stephen Castle. We're going with the Big DC, Almost 7'2", two-time national champion. Donovan Clingan will be our number 2 player. Number 2 all time
I think he brought the
in this
goods.
draft. No way you can say that he didn't.
Right, I think he brought the goods, man.
And guess what he is that nobody else is almost? 7'2".
Right.
There's not a lot of that around. He runs well. He's really strong. Blocks shots. Going to do some really, really good things in the NBA. And if you're looking at Derek Lively and look at some of these other players that are in the NBA, Donovan Clingan, don't skip him. Don't skip them, folks. And I dare any of these other NBA general managers to jump on all of these other NCAA players before Zach Edey. I dare you. Go ahead. Put your job on the line. Go ahead. Put your contract on the line because I don't think you're going to have too much success with that. All right. I want to give you a couple of other names that I like that I haven't put them in where they belong yet, but I'm going to give them to you in the draft where I like. And just to say that they're missing the boat on a few of these guys. Okay? They're very high on Dalton Connect. I'm not. They're very high on Reed Shepherd. I'm high on him, but not as high as they are. They're very, very high on some of these other players, and I'm just not. Okay. Who am I high on? I like N'Faly Dante from Oregon. A lot of people have him late in the first round. I do not. I like Cody Williams from Colorado a lot. He's been talked about as being very, very high in the draft. I think that's warranted. Very terrific athlete. He's got a very bright future. Spent 1 year at Colorado. Tristan da Silva. Don't sleep on it, folks. Do not sleep on that name. Okay? Tristan da Silva, also out of Colorado. Colorado will have 3 players drafted almost in the first round this year. That could really, really happen. If KJ Simpson goes in the first round, you're going to see possibly 3 of their players get drafted in the first round out of Colorado. I like Stephen Castle, but I like Clingan more. Kyle Filipowski, he's coming out. Big, skilled, can do some stuff. I'm not as high on him as I am on Clingan and as I am on Edey, though. Terrence Shannon from Illinois, I like him a lot. Had a really, really good career there, a really, really good year. Devin Carter, I've always been high on Devin Carter because I like elite shot makers, but after seeing his combine and watching him play, I think I might be looking to move him up into lottery pick. I was a little bit knocked with his size. It wasn't quite what I was looking for. Jared McCain from Duke, I like a lot as a point guard prospect. I think he'll be pretty good. I really like Baylor Shearman. Okay? So if you're a late first round NBA executive and you need the best shooter in this draft, it's Baylor Shearman. Okay, he is the best shooter in this draft, and he's 6'7", 6'8" lefty. Played at Creighton, and he is a knockdown shooter. So if you have a really good guard that's a lead guard like Kyrie Irving, or you have another lead guard that's really, really mercurial and can get to the rim, this guy's going to make a lot of shots when they kick it. This guy's going to make a lot of shots in that corner when they kick it. I really, really like the fact that they stayed a little bit of time at Creighton, developed, and did some really good stuff there. But those are some of the guys I like. I like Kel Elware from Indiana, but maybe not as high as everybody else likes him because he's a big also. I like Yves Missy from Baylor, but probably not where everybody else likes him. And I thought the guy who lost the most height in the whole NBA combine this year was a gentleman by Adem Bona from UCLA, but I'm still pretty high on him. I just don't know positionally what's going to happen with him, but his vertical and his ability to block shots is terrific. But he came down from like 6'11" down to like 6'8.5", so I think that's going to be a concern. I'll have to go back and look at that, exactly what happened. There are some people that I've dropped out on that I'm not really as high on as first-round picks. I think Jamal Sheed possibly, could get into that first round, but I'm not as high on him as I am on some of the other guys. I'm not that high on Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky as well. I'll say that. Everybody loves him. He's a shot maker, but I'm not as high on him as some of the other players are. Here I'm going to give you, in our closing minutes, I'm going to give you, and this show's been absolutely jam-packed, been like running down the track here almost, but I'm going to give you the top 5 guys that they're talking about internationally, so you can start doing your homework as well. And then I'm going to give you one, okay, that I like, all right, as an international player that I have seen a little bit, and I think he's going to be pretty good, okay? Zachary Reesasher, all right, this is when you look at this draft, you're going to say something that no one else has said in the history of the world. The French are invading. Nobody has ever said that in the history of the world. But the French are invading.
Viva la France.
They're invading the NBA, Pete. And so you have Victor Wembanyama and Koulibaly, who came in this year's top 10 picks, both of them out of Viva la France. And now Zachary Risacher coming out of the French Pro League as well. 6'8", he's 19 years of age. They're talking about him possibly being the number 1 pick. We'll have to take a closer look at that. Number 2, out of there, 7'1", 216-pound, 19-year-old Alex Sarr, another player out of France. Now, I don't know if they're just winding up in France in these leagues or there's something happening in France that's really, really good. Nikola Topic, third. He's going to be a high-rated pick, and he's Serbian. He's coming out of Serbia. 18 years old, though, and he's 6'6", 198 pounds. I think there's going to be a physical adjustment for Mr. Topic, but he can play. He can play, they say. Matas Buzelis, 6'9", 197 pounds. He's from Lithuania. He's also American. I think that a friend of mine is a friend of his agent. And so we're going to go out and we'll hope for good things there, that they can make a good hit and get paid. Tijan Salon, again, 6'9", 212, from France. They're talking about 3 of the top, 15 picks in the NBA draft coming out of France. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Again, I'm going to leave this there, but people can make what they want out of this. I'm not advocating for this, but right now you have 4.1, 4.2 international players on every NBA team. For years and years and years, the European leagues kept the American players limited to 3 players on a roster. Will the NBA do that and start to defend our American players? I can tell you right now, I've told you before, they will not. They will not, because the NBA is a National Basketball Association. They should change their name to the International Basketball Association, because right now there's a whole lot of that going on. Here's 2 guys that are going back that I think are going to be really good next year. Johnny Broome is going to return to Auburn. Possibly NIL arrangement can make that go. And Nelly Joseph is going to go back to New Mexico. I would have had both of those gentlemen probably in the top 20 picks had they gone into the draft. Whew. That's a mouthful, Pete. That's a mouthful. But we are going to continue to carry through with the draft, and so we'll just give you a little bit of an update about what the previews of the next couple of weeks are going to be in the zone. So we're going to absolutely, and what I'm going to do is try and get this to Pete a week early so he can start working his graphics, and we can get you out there, and we're going to get an NBA in the zone draft both rounds. I don't know that we can do all of that in one show, but I think we might be able to. If not, it'd be really cool to split it up 30 and 30. We can split it up between 2 shows and give you the first round and then give you the second round. We'll probably try the best we can to give it to you in one shot so that we can move on to all other things. Right now, you'll have the Celtics tonight in Game 2, and there's a lot of people out there that watch this show that might like to place a wager from time to time. I will illuminate that the Celtics have lost all their Game 2s in the playoffs so far, and then came back and recovered and did their damage in the rest of the series.
Is this the time to buck the trend?
This could be a time to do it, but watching that Pacer team, I would take a really good look at that number that they place in between the two, because the number there the last time was significant. It was like 10 points, and I think that I think they think the Celtics are going to go. But I think that they think that this Indiana team's not laying down. This Indiana team's not laying down. And I think the NBA, I don't know that they had anything vested in the Denver Nuggets. They had the championship last year, but Denver's not a major market area. So I don't think they had anything vested in there. The end of that, the way that series went with the Wolves taking the first 2, and then the Nuggets taking the first 3, I would have never called that the Timberwolves would have won that last game. But they came back, put up a great effort, and they really, really showed well. They showed like an experienced team. Follow up the next night, that they played in their game one against the Mavericks, they looked inexperienced. So shake that out to inexperience. That comes around once in a while. I see them rallying in their game too. And I don't know. I think the Celtics are very good, but they stand around way, way too much on offense for me. And the Indiana Pacers are leading the NBA right now with their veteran coach, Rick Carlisle, in getting over 31 open looks per game. And if that continues, I think that's going to make every single game close, because you're going to be able to get wide open shots. And when you get wide open shots in the NBA, they're going to have a tendency to go in. And when you get to Indiana, like the Knicks did, you're going to see a different team. You're going to see a different set. And you're also now, watch, because they did this before. The Pacers did this in the Knicks series. They filed a grievance about the officiating, over 78 calls. And if it continues the way this goes with a 20-point differential in the free throws, they may subliminally want to get into the heads of the officials again and file another grievance to say, hey, we're not going to keep putting up with this, because the officiating drastically changed after they filed that grievance with the NBA. All right, Pete, I think we're out of time.
Yes, we are.
We did a great job today, Pete. We love being in the zone with all of our folks. Last week was a good show, but it did not beat our highest number. Did not beat our highest number of views. Please do us a favor and share it with your friends. Like it. Give us some pump here, because we're doing everything we can to bring you the best information. Pete, we'll see you next week. We're in the zone.